contribute and what it is that they have to offer. And if education is going to be happening, is it the education that you want to be had? And so that you aren't, you don't, in the process kind of almost feel embittered, like, wait, I'm not getting what I expected, and I am getting, I might be getting the short end of the stick. And so that communication up front, I think, is really crucial. And, until everything kind of becomes clear-cut, because it isn't, and it may never be. So, my experience has been rewarding and challenging, exhilarating and discouraging, or has been all of those. An apprenticeship is for anyone who wants to learn about life and farming. So it's very multi-dimensional.
Just briefly following up on what she said, I think that this communication idea is probably the most important thing to take away from here. In a lot of ways, the law is traditionally written for what Oliver Wendell Holmes once called the bad man. That is, the idea behind most legal regulation is that people are going to go for what they can. If it's legal to have interns or apprentices or whatever on farms that actually do, basically supplant what would otherwise be an ordinary farmhand, then lo and behold, there are going to be people who are going to exploit that like crazy. And so, leaving aside the legal issues for a moment, and the legal issues are really serious in part because, it doesn't take an aggrieved worker to bring down punishment on the heads of employers who do this. The Department of Labor, both state and federal, actually will go out and check up and make sure that things are being done without a complaint. That's a discussion that more could be had. But it's important, it is possible to avoid exploitation and to do this on a genuinely fair, an honest and open basis with people who are in good faith and who are communicating openly. And that's really the hard thing to do. So, I think it would be great. I don't know if people have thoughts or questions. If not, we can sort of lead a discussion. I have some topics to throw out for discussion, but if people have things that they want to ask about, let's see.
So I have a question. So can I talk about Barry for something and La Milpa? So he says often. I'm sorry. Leah, can everyone hear me? All right. So if you all know, Barry Logan is a farmer at La Milpa, and he often says that it's not a business, right? That's his new thing. It's not a business. He's a farmer, and it's a farm. Or maybe you could speak to that more.
It's not a business. It's an educational environment.
But it is a business. Ultimately, he wants to put food on his own table, presumably by doing this. So, there's an extent to which you have to recognize that there's an economic function as well as sort of an agricultural educational function, and it's not that easy to separate.
But he's looking to make ends meet and not have an accumulation of wealth per se. His goal is more educational. Yes, you can't survive without food and paying the rent, versus I'm going to make my fortune out of this farm, right? Mm-hmm. Which is not the norm in American business, so I can understand that the law is not being written for that, but
exactly.
I think that's really when you said it's not a business. Yes, there is an economic component, but it's not. Yeah.
And that he's not able. Most small family farms aren't able to make. He's lucky. He's a lucky. 7 years, and he's barely able to pay bills and pay workers and pay apprentices. So I don't know. I know that there's no legal backup for that, but it's interesting.
These are really hard questions. I think we have to recognize here that there are no simple solutions to this kind of problem. It's a constant struggle. Really, I guess. I think that everyone in this room would agree that the true solution is to reform the economic and agricultural environment so that small farmers can survive and as well as do right by their workers. But in the environment that we're in, that's not necessarily so possible. I'll let you handle that.
Just he has a question.
What about when you poison in a different way, the apprentice pays to be there technically? On paper, and then it's no longer an employee. They're through like however UCSC does it, because they're like apprenticeship programs. Like they've had to go through a lot of stuff too. Like I was living up there. I'm from here. I didn't go to it, but I've like been around there. Like they make them take their tents away and like make more like legitimate stuff. But like people like they pay to be there, so it's like when it's like set up like a different style. Like if you set up like entities like different, like a non-profit for like educate, like like that. Like even if they pay like $100 to be there a year, and like they're receiving much more in like education and like learning. So like it's just like if you set it up differently like that, like there's I think laws like this like instantly think loopholes, So it's like that, isn't it? Like that's something along like that line, like where they paid to be there technically, and like that's all on file on paper and like safe housing, whatever. Then it's like a different.
Well, it doesn't matter whether they're paid to be there isn't the central issue, but I think it's related to the central issue, which is, it's a question of whether they're really sort of there to learn, or whether they're really there to work. In other words, are they displacing employees? Is there an educational program offered that's sort of something like a college? So yes, to the extent that there's a sort of a full-fledged educational program that pushes things more toward the okay with the law kind of a spectrum.
But that's like along the lines like maybe you have to go to skirt the law at this point.
You have to what?
To skirt the law at this point, like to not get yourself in trouble, like you'd have to do like educationally base your program. If there's not, then it essentially has to be like a program, which is like it sounds like.
Yeah, skirt the law is such a loaded term.
Something like that. I don't know. I'm just like
you comply with the law, or you don't. And one way to
friends out to
comply
my
with
farm,
the law is to modify the program.
You had a question.
Well, historically, there have always been apprenticeships in guilds, and I can't imagine that in Europe 400 years ago people were paid a minimum wage to be an apprentice in a guild, and we have a set of apprenticeships like the Peace Corps. Do Peace Corps volunteers get minimum wage?
I think they get living.
Yeah, Peace Corps volunteers.
How about AmeriCorps? Do AmeriCorps volunteers get minimum
No,
wage?
stipends.
Okay, so
They're eligible for food stamps, though.
well, there is a mechanism for this training, and the country certainly needs this training, and it needs a cadre of people learning these skills. So is there any effort, state or federal, to start a farm corps, for example, or something that is a short-term or temporary program to encourage this kind of thing for a year, 6 months, 18 months? Is there any effort you're aware of on?
From my experience, going to like Eco Farm and stuff like that, I don't know if there isn't like a farm corps, but there is open communication and understanding between like seasoned farmers that have opportunity for young people who want to get into farming, and there are actually nonprofits set up to link these people together.
Okay.
So FarmLink out of San Diego,
Right.
Santa Cruz,
But that still doesn't help with the legal issues.
But no, I'm not aware of anything like that, but it's a great idea. If you want to start lobbying for it, I think that, I'd applaud you.
Well, I am lobbying for it. That's why I'm here today.
Oh,
Okay.
good.
We're not for Farm Corps, but I wanted to ask about, so there's, first of all, just approaching this issue, we have a shortage of farmers. We have lots of demand for farmers markets, and the limiting factor is not the demand, it's the number of farmers. And the educational opportunities for somebody who wants to be a farmer right now are limited in terms of traditional universities where we know it's educational. Really what Emily's done is one of the places that is available to learn how to farm. And Washington State just passed a law, which I would really like to see replicated here. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Basically, you, as the farmer, and you need to be below a certain threshold of gross income or something, so you're a small farm, you go to the government and you say, I have an educational opportunity for an intern, this is what they will get out of it. They're not just picking my strawberries, they're learning how to be a farmer. And then you are therefore allowed to pay less than minimum wage for an intern. And also,
does the state subsidize that program? Does the state sort of fill in
not
the
to
gap?
my knowledge. Not to my knowledge. It's, they're proving that there's an exchange going on. I'm giving of my time that I could be using to spend to be more productive on my farm, and I'm educating. And they're coming away with something non-monetary, which is their education. And also, it irks me that room and board is not seen as compensation.
Well,
Where-
sometimes it is.
I-
It's